Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Hello listeners, a little bit of a change this week to our scheduled plan for discussion. We were originally going to be talking about the 1952 Washington DC UFO event. However, as you're going to hear in this episode, we got quite sidetracked talking about last week and the week before's discussion with Marcus Churchill all about Roswell, the final verdict, the documentary that Marcus starred in. So without further ado, have a listen to this week's episode. It's not as planned, as I say, but it's thoroughly entertaining and interesting nonetheless. Enjoy.
Hello listeners and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the mysterious skies and whatever mysterious artifacts those mysterious objects in the sky leave on the ground or in our lakes and seas and wherever. And this week I'm one of your this week and every week I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly,
and I'm your other host, Stu Jackson. Take three.
Stu's laughing because I made such a balls up of it. I can't even be trusted to do the welcome our listeners to the show.
65 episodes in.
65 episodes, yeah, wow.
That means that at least 32 of them you've done the welcome on.
Yeah, you know.
It's a phenomenon, though, isn't it? If you do something often enough, you kind of become. It's like observing things. You get a blindness to it. You become, well, laissez-faire, I suppose. It becomes more difficult the more you do a thing. That is a recognised phenomenon, isn't it?
Is it? I remember when I started riding a motorbike. They said that there are two phases in your motorbiking life when you're most likely to have an accident. One is right at the beginning, when you're still learning, and the second is a bit later on. You know, you'll go through a safe phase, and then you'll get to a stage where you start taking more and more risks, and you become risky again. And I guess it's a bit like that with introducing without the risk of physical harm, but doing introductions and introducing. See how I've managed to fuse those two words atomically. Without the risk of physical harm, but you still bugger it up. I don't know that I've actually gone through a safe phase though yet.
I like introducing. I think, you know.
Introducing, yes.
I'm going to put that on my CV. I'm a professional introductinator.
That will get interest. People like a new word.
But yeah, the whole motorbike thing. The highest catcher, certainly in the UK, I imagine it's going to be the same for elsewhere in the world. The highest insurance cost is for men in their 40s. Because you're absolutely right. Like as teenagers, we'd get our motorbikes in our early 20s, and then we'd not me, but people would get married, have kids, change the motorbike for a car. Then the kids would leave home. Maybe I'll get on a motorbike again. Well, of course, the roads are totally different now. The bikes are completely different to what they were 30 years ago.
In a way that's usually better and safer, better brakes, better road holding,
but also much faster.
Well, and there's also that aspect, isn't there? When you start riding a motorbike on a provisional license, which in the UK allows you to ride a bike up to. When I started back in the 1970s, you could ride up to 250cc, but then Suzuki brought out their X3 or whatever they brought out a 250. That was as light as a moped, but could do 100 miles an hour in good conditions. So that's when the insurers or everyone who in authority got together and said, 250, a 100-mile-an-hour 250cc bike is far too much for someone who's only just got a provisional license, who's never taken any kind of test, never had any form of training to just get on and ride. So they reduced it to 125cc. So I can imagine people they start up with a small bike, they learn to ride it, they take their test, and then they go and buy a 1200cc superbike. Yeah. That's the equivalent of a Formula One car in terms of performance. And
you ever been on one of those?
A high performance superbike? Yeah. No, not even on the back of one. I've ridden, I think a 650 is the biggest I've ever ridden.
Right. I'm a cruiser rider through and through. So I'm like, I've never been a fan of Harleys, but that chopper style bike. I had an 1100, but that was a Yamaha Virago. So, it's all in the low end. It's not a high speed bike. But then I had to go on a Fireblade, which is, for listeners who know these things, that is a proper sports bike. It scared the shit out of me. And I've never been on a sports bike since. But I did for a while. I had a Suzuki Intruder, which is a 1300. Wow. Now, that's kind of a sports cruiser. I mean, they look absolutely beautiful if you Google Suzuki Intruder. Beautiful bike. Not right now, Neil, with the podcast, but yeah. For listeners, Google that because they are amazing. I was riding along the motorway on it, just like quite comfortably. And I'm not one to speed on bikes at all. In fact, I'm more likely to hold up traffic, doing 50 and a 60 limit. I'm a very sedate rider. But I'm like riding along on this bike and I'm thinking, all this other traffic's going ever so slow. Look down at the clock and I'm doing 180. And I didn't even realise it. That scared me as well.
That is I sold scary.
The bike not long after that. And haven't had a bike since. I keep thinking about getting another one though. I'm like really in the mood, but I'd probably go for another Virago or something like that, I think.
Would you? The last bike I had was a 125 scooter for commuting, and a very good commuter it was while it lasted.
Scooters aren't motorbikes.
Well, it's a bike with a motor on it, so I know. I know we're going to get to a mods and rockers thing here, aren't we?
That's mods and rockers. My goodness. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
No,
today.
but before we get to this week's topic, I have something to say about the topic that we covered in the last two episodes, which was about the Roswell crash, the final verdict.
Yeah, have you had a chance to watch it? You had a rant about it.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to have a rant about it now because I'm triggered. And I cannot return to a state of grace until I've had my say about this. So I watched the first episode of Roswell, the final verdict, and it was lovely meeting with Marcus Churchill, who played the part of Major Jesse Marcel in who was the major who was one of the first at the scene when the crash was discovered. I have no notes about his acting. He's a very nice bloke, very nice actor. My only note on that part is for wardrobe. Get him a hat that fucking fits. Also, yes. It's too late now, but yeah.
Yes, it was hanging over one ear at one point.
Or both ears. Senior military officers do not wear a formal dress cap that comes down over their ears. So that's my note for wardrobe. Marcus mentioned this. Have you watched this thing?
I've watched the first two episodes.
Okay, I've only watched the first one, so you can perhaps pull me up. But in the first one,
if I can, I will.
Okay, if I let you get a word in edgeways. Now, Marcus mentioned that they told him about this AI, this artificial intelligence, which they had applied to these video clips or these old film clips of people talking, which would measure their micro-muscular movements on their faces.
Yep, micro-expressions.
Micro-expressions to determine whether they're telling the truth. So they'll play this old bit of footage, and what would come up, what would be superimposed on their faces, it's a bit like if you're watching CSI, when they're looking for a fingerprint match, and the fingerprint comes up on the computer screen on the computer, and then all these dots appear and lines join it, and then it does the search based on those measurements. So something like that appears on the face.
That's for dramatic effects. That's not...
I don't know. I've never seen a police computer searching for fingerprints, but basically that's what comes up on this video screen on their faces, to superimpose on their faces while they're talking. So they'll play the clip, and then the AI will go ding ding ding, true, and they say, oh, they're telling the truth. And let me just say, bollocks. For our American listeners, bullshit. Now, if I was giving you a polygraph test, let's call it what it is, a lie detector.
It's not.
It's not, all right. But I'm giving you a polygraph test to determine whether you're telling the truth, even though this is in no way can be called a lie detector test because it's not reliable enough to be called that. But I would ask you a series of baseline questions, wouldn't I? Questions that we both knew the answer to, routine questions, so that I could see on the graph that it draws what your normal reaction is to a question.
That is how a polygraph test
works. That's
how a polygraph...
Yes,
because it measures different things to what this AI does.
Okay, it's measuring different things, but we're still establishing a baseline. So the idea that you can take a 10-second film clip of not high quality, we're talking pre-digital, with no baseline. So you've never seen this guy speaking before. You don't know what his normal way of speaking is. And you can measure the different points on his face, and the AI will go ding, 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 true, bullshit, you can't do that. You've never seen this guy before. How do you know what his face looks like any other time?
Right. I'm going to pick up on a few points. So the graphic of the lines and the points on the face, that's what I was saying was for dramatic effect. That's not... I suspect that's... Well, might be to a degree how the AI works, but that visual was for the audience. It wasn't for the measuring of truth or anything like that.
Well, that's what it purported to be, and that's what, if people are watching this with a bit of a cynical view, saying this is real, or are the people who believe that there was a UFO crash at Roswell just a bunch of nut jobs? Well, this video, this thing does not help their case.
Well, you say that, but it's been very well established for probably hundreds of years now that certain reactions, certain facial movements, what direction your eyes look in when you tell a lie, that lying is manifestly observable if you're looking for the right things.
But I would argue, again, only if you know what they look like when they're telling the truth. You have to be able to compare. You can't just have a 5 or 10 second clip of an old movie and measure that and say, yeah, they're telling the truth or they're not telling the truth.
Well, no, because there are certain things that are universal. Like, for example, when we tell a lie, certain things happen in our brains. Certain reactions happen in our brains that create involuntary movements in our faces and in our eyes that we
I accept that.
That are the same across all people. It's so having a baseline is a bit kind of pointless there because we know it's going to be the same for every individual on the planet.
But that's fine if you can get the individual in a room and wire them up and measure their brain patterns. But just an old clip of film and a 10-second clip of that, you can't tell from that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That brain activity creates these physical reactions that you can measure, that can be observed.
Yeah, but there's a...
Now, I don't know the technology that they used. Certainly, as far as I've got into watching it, they haven't gone into it in that much detail. But I imagine that that's what they're working on is, what directions does a person's eyes fit? When a person, for example, when a person's lying, they tend to look to the left as they're talking. Hang on, have I got this right? Or is it the right? They look to one side anyway, I forget which, because there is a massive amount of activity in the corresponding hemisphere of the brain that is all to do with creativity.
Yeah. So whether they look towards the side of their brain that's making something up, or they look to the side of the brain that's accessing their genuine memory.
Yeah,
But what
basically.
what that can't rule out is that if someone is telling you something that they believe to be true, which is untrue.
Well, this is where. I mean, this is a hell of a digression we're going
Yeah.
on. But this is where we as actors, we are taught how to make a characterization real. Because, we have to have those genuine emotions when we're portraying them. Otherwise, it looks false. And it unconsciously looks false to the general observer. You can tell when a bad actor is acting badly. Because unconsciously we are picking up on those micro expressions that say, well, that person's lying.
Yeah. Or that it's a person they haven't learned their lines very well, or they haven't had time to learn them. And so they're having to access their memory.
Yeah.
To remember their lines, which is a different kind of thing, to be genuinely. Yeah, they're supposedly expressing another emotion like anger or sadness. They're actually saying, "So what was it I say here again?"
Exactly. They're not portraying that. And you know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, I think that's one of the reasons. Well, I mean, hopefully there's many reasons, but one of the reasons why people like listening to this is because you and I are genuinely passionate about what we're doing, and that will come across in the recording, even audio only. You can still. It's all this stuff that you instinctively know. And it's not us acting passionate. We genuinely are passionate about it. Whereas you hear other podcasts, and I'm not going to name any at all, but you can hear it where they're kind of pretending to be passionate about stuff. And their heart's not in it. And
we're the real thing, listeners. We're really getting on each other's... I know we've digressed a lot. But I have something else to say about the wreckage.
Oh my goodness.
There's one bit where Major Jesse Marcel says that this wreckage was basically indestructible. That if you hit it with a sledgehammer, the sledgehammer will just bounce off. It's wait a minute, bullshit! I've just seen you scrunch up a piece of that wreckage in your fist like it was a candy wrapper, and then when you let go of it, unraveled like a candy wrapper would. But he's got the AI on his face which goes ding ding ding. True, yes, it would bounce. No, it wouldn't. You've just squashed it up. And, this wreckage is problematic for me because he's saying it's indestructible. And yet we got a field that is littered with debris, with so many tiny fragments of this indestructible material that you can't even see what it was before it crashed. It's just tiny fragments. It obviously didn't break up in the air because, as we saw, these fragments are featherweight. They would have drifted for miles. They wouldn't all be scattered in one field. And it obviously didn't break up on impact with the ground. Otherwise, there'd be a big smoking crater, which destroyed this indestructible craft. So what we got is a field full of all these fragments that look like, to me, I know this is only the recreation for the documentary rather than footage of the actual field. But what it looks like to me is exactly what the US Air Force says it was. It looks like a burst balloon. So if you're trying to say it's not a burst balloon, then don't recreate a wreckage field that looks like a burst balloon.
Okay, so I can't believe I'm going to ask you this question. You're probably going to shout at me for asking it, but you don't think that was images of the actual wreckage, do you?
No, but if that's what they think the wreckage look like, then they're not doing themselves any favours because that raises too many questions.
Partly, I mean, there were no photographs that we have access to taken of the wreckage. So, what they're going to do, and you know this as well as I do, when you do something like this, when a production company creates something like this, they have it look as dramatic as possible. And yes, having lots of small pieces of wreckage spread out over a wide area, making sure that you can't identify what anything is what they did. Now, I don't think for a single moment that bears any resemblance to what it actually looked like. They might have absolutely nailed it for all I know, but I suspect not. It's a dramatisation.
It's a dramatisation, but it's not a way that helps their case.
And I'm going to say about the different types of wreckage as well. So you talked about the one piece that, yes, he was able to crumple it up in his hand. It was incredibly light. And as he released his hand, it went back to his original shape. Again, they showed looked like a crumpled piece of foil for that. But that was one type of piece of wreckage. They also talked about I-beams as well that had the hieroglyphs on. That was a different type of wreckage. And we're possibly even talking about a third different piece of wreckage that they're talking about was pretty much indestructible. It's not all the same piece of wreckage.
That wasn't too clear.
I agree. They could have made that clearer. Absolutely. It's not.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is they haven't made their case very well, if that's the final verdict. Certainly not in episode 1, anyway.
If you had an aeroplane crash and you took a piece of the hull and you said, "Oh my God, like this has got like a really high melting point, this piece of material," and then someone else gets a piece of plastic off the dashboard and says, "No, it hasn't," look, and melts the plastic really easily. You know, any vehicle is going to be made up of multiple materials. That's what I'm getting from that is some of it was this memory metal that reformed its own shape. I mean, you're saying like what did you say it was like a candy wrapper?
For the benefit of our American listeners, yes, a candy wrapper.
Candy wrapper. I'm seeing more like a piece of aluminium aluminum
for our American listeners, which apparently is nearer the correct description.
I have heard this said, by me, but by you and others. Anyway, I like to call it aluminium. But yeah, more like a kind of a sheet of that, if you were to twist it and change, it then reforms its original shape. Let's say the I-beams themselves are a very different type of material. But yeah, okay, so you didn't like the AI, you didn't like this idea. I mean, do you know what, as human beings, the concept that our lies might get picked up digitally is quite scary, isn't it?
If you're a habitual liar, although actually, we have prominent politicians in the UK and the USA who don't care that their lies are picked up, because the kind of people who pick up their lies are people who can't do anything about it.
What, like the media and the opposition?
What does Boris Johnson care what the Guardian says about whether he told the truth or whatever, or that what he said today is different from what he said yesterday?
And let's face it, our current leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, isn't picking him up on all his lies anyway. I mean, he's not out there in Parliament saying, "Fuck me, Boris, you are lying." Why isn't he doing that? Anyway, that's a whole other. That's
in fact, one MP was thrown out of the House of Commons for saying just that, without the F word, because it's unparliamentary language. You can lie in Parliament, but if you call someone a liar, you're using unparliamentary language. Sorry, you've overstepped the line here. You've got to go.
Well, there was his name suddenly escaped me. When David Cameron was Prime Minister, and one of them called him Dodgy Dave, which it was. I mean, David Cameron, dodgy as hell.
Yeah.
Another schemer. Anyway, we're getting off the topic, but back onto Roswell. So aside from the AI, I mean, you know what I'm talking about with that picking up. We instinctively and unconsciously pick up these little micro expressions that tell when people lie. Surely you've looked at someone and you can see them and you can tell just by, you get a gut feeling they're lying.
Yeah, but it's also the substance of what they're saying and how that compares with what I believe or know to be true.
Have there not been any instances where someone has been conveying something to you that you are very utterly neutral on, and you've just got a feeling they're lying?
Yes. When they're telling, I've been in the army. Remember, guys talk told tales about their heroic exploits. Yeah, that's. I mean, in the army, we used to say, "Oh yeah, pull up a sandbag, swing the lamp. Come on, tell us all about how you." The more heroic a person is making himself to be in his own tale, then the more bullshit is.
Well, that I can understand, but I mean, I can think of times when with ex-partners, I've instinctively known, for example, when one ex in particular sort of springs to mind, she was cheating on me, and I instinctively knew it. There was nothing I could have pointed to and said that because of that I know she's cheating on me, but I instinctively knew she was, and that was proven to be right. It's things like that basically this AI, as I understand it, which is limited for this specific AI, but in general, it's just applying the science to that gut instinct that we've always ascribed things to.
I would argue that what you're picking up, although the whatever you're picking up is so microscopic, you're almost not picking it up with your conscious mind, but something in your subconscious is telling you that this is different from their baseline. This isn't you've established what their baseline is when they're being honest, and you've somehow picked up little signs that this time is different. This time,
I'm not so sure. I think there are things that are universal because I've done it with people I've never met before. Just like, something about them. I mean, people. I can meet someone instinctively and just not like them as soon as they open their mouth.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah, and yet here we are years later as friends.
Or have it done to us as soon as you open your mouth.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think there's something in that. I'd be intrigued to hear what our listeners, if our listeners, particularly those in America who are able to watch Roswell, The Final Verdict, what opinion do they have about it?
So I want your opinion on the AI, I want your opinion on the wreckage field, and I want your opinion on Major Jesse Marcel's hat.
I mean, I think that's a little harsh about that. Neil.
Well, as a military man, I'm sure we do have some ex-military or maybe current military listeners. They're going to react to that. You should see
as an actor, though. I mean.
But I think that really stands out. I mean, the British Army, and increasingly I think the American Army, troops wear berets, and there's a correct way of wearing a beret. And in the British Army, the big thing is about shrinking your beret, so that it's a really nice. Look at a real soldier with his really neat sort of nicely folded over beret, and then you look at someone in a TV program with his fucking helicopter landing pad on his head, and squaddies react to that. Squaddies say, bollocks. There's no way that they can see if an actor playing a soldier has had no military experience because they don't know how to. They don't even know how to wear a uniform.
Well.
Or carry a weapon, or wear a hat, but
if it's a documentary recreation, I mean, I don't know. I give a lot of leeway. I've done these things as an actor.
I'm not criticising Marcus at all. Just his hat.
Well, no,
which is a wardrobe.
It wasn't his job to provide his own outfit. Anyway. But yeah, okay. Interesting. I liked what I saw of it. I'm finding the time to plough through it slowly. The second episode is really interesting. It talks about the other crash.
Okay. Which I think was a more substantial wreckage, wasn't it? This was where you can actually see what the craft had been before.
And there's bodies.
And there's bodies. It's not just a burst balloon in a field.
Yeah, but they do come in with the AI and say, oh, yes, well, that person was telling the truth. I thought you were going to come in with a whole different rant. I'll be honest, a completely different rant, which is what I was expecting was. Hang on, we thought we were going to be talking to the people who actually saw this stuff, but actually no, it's the person that they spoke to. Which a lot of the time it was. But that's about how old, this footage is, and that's the best we've got.
Yeah.
It's the closest we can get to the actual people.
Mm.
But it works on the audio footage as well. But I don't know if that's episode 2 or episode 1.
I don't think it
There
was
was
in
a
episode
radio excerpt.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing I'm going to pick up on that you said really earlier about the AI stuff. You said, it takes a few seconds of clip in terms of, no, the AI looks at the entire thing overall. We're only seeing a few seconds because it's a documentary. And, to watch a half-hour interview in the middle of an hour-long documentary.
But did they have half-hour interviews? I mean, these are sort of 50, 60-year-old clips of film.
Yeah. I mean, some of it would be 10 minutes. It's going to vary, but what I'm saying is the AI will be looking at far more than just what we're seeing on screen.
They didn't make that clear, and they didn't help their case. If that was
they didn't. But then I don't know, a documentary that goes into now for this, we're looking at this much clip, and here's the exact moments when the AI says, "Oh yes, on this point they're really telling the truth." This bit is because it's never going to be binary all the way through an entire interview. It's going to be like peaks and troughs, and so I don't know. I take that kind of thing as read anyway, by default. But anyway, I think that pretty much wraps us up for this special episode looking back at Roswell, the final verdict. Unexpected. We weren't planning on doing this, but there we go.
I didn't realise how much I had to unload.
Well, that's fine. I mean, and it is an interesting point, and you raise some valid points. I mean, there's also another side to this. When a documentary like this comes out that is bringing it all into the public attention, you got to ask, why aren't they doing themselves any favours?
Well, yeah, is this an attempt to actually discredit any stories about UFOs?
Enough of a
enough
area, yeah.
But that's what I thought. This is a show purporting to show that yes, there was a UFO crash at Roswell, but actually it's an attempt to ridicule the people who claim that there's a. I don't know if it goes that far. I think it just leaves enough of a question hanging. But then calling it the final verdict, I mean, we're not silly. We know that that's a marketing ploy. Calling it, well, the latest development in a long line of developments is less catchy. It sounds more dramatic than our verdict so far, or the latest verdict.
Or looking at the footage that's already been looked at.
And coming to the same conclusion that we came to last time.
Yeah. Well, some of it they didn't. Some they did pick up some lies. Again, that might be the second episode.
No, the first episode they picked up one lie that one guy said. Right. This went all the way up to the president, and it went ding ding ding. No, he's lying.
Yeah, that was interesting. Was interesting. But anyway, do let us know what you think about it, listeners. If you've had a chance to watch it over in the US of A, we want to know. We want to know what you think. Is it accurate, this AI? Is it questionable? Is the wreckage, have we misunderstood it completely? Don't bother telling us about his hat, for God's sake. Oh, unless you really want to. Unless you feel as strongly as Neil.
Yeah. All those ex-military or current military listeners, yeah, this is a big deal, isn't it?
Well, does it detract from the whole thing? I mean, I'm more about the content than anything, but yes, does it detract? Do let us know. You can let us know via the usual means. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on email, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us those other ways by just searching Aliens Explored. Links are in the descriptions as ever. Well, gosh, it's going to be a week later than we'd planned, but do join us next time when we will, hopefully, unless Neil wants to go off on another rant, be talking about the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO. UFO?
You're doing
I
it
can't
now.
even say
All these, how many? 65 episodes.
and I can't even say UFO properly. Yes, the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO event, also known as the Big Flap. We're going to be talking about that next week. So in the meantime, keep watching those documentaries, ill-fitting hats or otherwise, and the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you next time. Bye. Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit us on aliensexplored.com.